Welcome to Transcendent. I'm Joe, and I'm the dad.
And I'm Raya, and I'm the daughter.
When I was spending time in another state, we wanted to have some people over at our house, but we realized we didn't have enough chairs. Your sister said she had a stool I could borrow. The next morning, I decided I'm going to take the stool back. I got in the elevator, set the stool down, and there was a guy in there. He looked at me and didn't say anything, and I realized he was thinking, how odd. I said, "Oh, I have a doctor's appointment." And he asked me to bring in a stool sample.
When I first came out to you, Dad, you have said many times that one of the immediate thoughts that you had was, I need to accept her or I lose her. When I first came out to you, I was not thinking about how you would respond. I was very, very focused on the trauma I was going through or the things that I was trying to deal with and finally getting it out. And it wasn't until after the fact that you and I started to talk about it, really on this podcast, that I understood how valuable that was for me and how important that was, how you approached it, and that you came at my transition and the topic of me sorting through my LGBTQ identity as a transgender person with a value set that honored me and wanted to make sure that you were loving towards me. And I think a lot of people, a lot of our listeners don't necessarily have that. Maybe you're listening right now and you're thinking, boy, I would like to be that kind of person, that I would walk in love towards people around me. So, Dad, I thought today you and I could talk about your values and what has formed you and how you became that person that was there for me when I needed you the most, that you were exactly the dad that I needed you to be.
First of all, I wasn't necessarily that person before you came out. And when you came out, it wasn't one of the thoughts I had. It was the only thought I had.
How did you know? What made you think when you were in that moment and you knew that you had to accept me, and how important that was? Because a lot of parents don't realize that. They think, well, I can change them. Maybe if I push a little bit or if I try this, and they start thinking of strategies.
I realized anything that I said would have probably alienated you. You were vulnerable at that point. But you also knew that I had my own vision of those kinds of things. If you remember, I certainly shared a lot of the LGBTQ type jokes that made those people, I say those people including you, which I didn't know, the brunt of the joke, which is not appropriate. I've learned that since, and a variety of other things. So at that point, I loved you so much anyway that whatever you were doing, I wanted to communicate that I'm not going to stop loving you. We're not going to stop having a close relationship. Because the time we had together, those first 40 years together, you meant so much to me, more than you know. And I had my own vision for you at that point. Oh, you could take over the company. And we had a lot of fun working together, and it was working quite well.
We sure did.
So it was great. But I could see that this was going to be the end of that. But it wasn't going to be the end of our relationship. That I knew. So the only thing I thought was, it's my turn. I have to be the one to say, I accept it. Anything else wouldn't have worked. You weren't in the position where I was going to try to reason you out of this idea.
How did you know that?
I don't know. Well, here's what was pretty obvious. This was going to change your whole life. The life you built was about to be torn down completely. So I guess I realized that if you had to do that because of what you felt you needed to do, it was a cost that was so high for you to pay. I wasn't going to add to that burden.
Yeah.
I couldn't add. All I could do is support you. At that point, there's a whole lot I didn't know about the LGBTQ plus community. There is still a lot I don't know about that. There are some things you don't know about that. But I have gained so much understanding and acceptance that I have not only come to support anyone in the LGBTQ plus community, I want to champion it. It means a lot to me to convince people that it's like being left-handed. You knew I would get that in here somewhere.
I think you, at that moment, had an easier time seeing the trajectory that I was on than I could myself.
I think that's true. When you actually came out and said you might be transgender, I don't even believe you used those words. Actually, I was shocked. I was surprised. I had no idea. I did not think that was going to be something you wanted to talk about, or that it was even anything that you would have thought of yourself.
Right.
It was so foreign to me, but it was such a big thing. It would be like saying, I want to go to a foreign country and you'll never see me again, because that's kind of how I felt it might be. At this point, I could say, if this is what you're going to do and this is what you pursue, I've lost my son. But what I didn't know, and I learned just by sticking with you, yes, I lost my son, but you're the same person.
Mm-hmm.
We have the same relationship, only stronger than it ever was in those first 40 years. And it was strong. When you were 4 years old, I wrote a song about you.
Yes.
My best friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that really formed me growing up. That song drove it home for me how accepted I am and how loved I am and how supported I am. I hear sometimes that people assume you're LGBTQ, you must not have had a good father figure, or you were lacking your mother, you were lacking something. I was not lacking in anything.
No, we had a good family.
We had a very good family. We grew up with our family going on. We would have family days once a week,
yes,
where we would go and each one of us got to pick something when it was our week. And it was only the four of us, so that made it pretty easy.
Uh-huh.
When I tried to implement that with 7 kids, that made it harder because it would, it was a long time before it would come back around to your turn. But you would get to pick one thing. And so it might be we're going to go swimming, or we might go see a movie, or
yes,
we're going to stay home and play a game night, or whatever those things were. And in my mind, every one of us would equally pick those. But I'm sure my sister and I would always pick expensive things going out, and you guys probably picked the stay-at-home things. But whatever we did, we always had fun, and whoever got to pick, it was their day to pick whatever the meal was going to be. So you'd pick homemade pizza, or we were going to go out to eat something, or whatever we would do. I had such a good childhood because of that.
Remember the red plate?
Yes. Anytime we had a special event, we had a special plate, and it was colored red, and it said around the outside, "You are special today."
Yes.
And so if it was your birthday, or if I remember I did solo ensemble and I did really well, and the red plate came out, and you would get the red plate maybe 2 or 3 or 4 times a year for this or that thing. And anytime you got it, it really made you feel special. Sometimes we would take it out when we would go out to eat somewhere. We'd go out maybe for Mom's birthday, and we would sneak the red plate in, and then we'd give it to the staff, and we'd say, "Can you please put the meal on the red plate?" And then they'd come out, and oh, I forgot it's the red plate. That was a really neat thing that we did as a family.
It sure was. And we did a lot of things like that. We had game night, and we did a lot with that. That was fun.
We played a lot of Uno, I remember.
Yes, we
and
did.
all kinds of games.
Mm-hmm. But it was fun.
Yeah. So we had a very good family dynamic and a very good relationship all the way along. When I hear other people's stories, I kind of won the family lottery here
Yeah.
because most people feel like my mom and dad got something messed up in some way. Everybody has some kinds of issues. I know you feel that way about your biological father.
Yes, I do.
Lots of people, I look around at a lot of my friends have that, but I have never once felt like I was lacking in any way. One thing that I remember growing up is there were some boys down the street that they would like to roughhouse and they would get on their big wheels. And if those toys lasted more than a week, it was a miracle. They just were very rough and tumble. I tried to play with them once or twice and I thought, boy, those boys are so rough.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. And to me, as I look back, no, that's a gender stereotype, but it was a gender stereotype that felt like it ran through to my core is that I would much prefer to play a quieter game with girls than to go out and do the boy kinds of things. But it still didn't tip you off that you knew that I was transgender. It just seemed like I had a slightly different temperament.
Right. And I think we all grow up that way. Each of us is unique. We're unique in that some things we might like that make you attracted to them because it happens to be a male thing. And you might like some other things that you're attracted to because it's a female thing. And it's not 100% of one thing and 100% of the other. It's a mixture, and each person is unique in the talents they have and the way they use them. One thing that guys like to do, maybe, is remodel their house, for example. Well, if I decided to remodel my house, people would come over and they'd see what I did and they'd say, "Oh, I see you did it yourself." Not my thing. I'm going to hire that to be done. That's not something I would expect to do. And there are a lot of things like that. I never played football. I did like baseball. I played baseball.
And we played a little bit of baseball out or softball in the backyard. I remember we had 4 trees that we could use, and those became the bases. And we did that a little bit, but I know I always felt like, I'm not very good at this, and this is not my thing at all. It was, I never really connected much with sports.
And I remember I played catch with you when you were very little, and you had a hard time learning it. You didn't catch the ball very well, so you spent a lot of time shagging it. But I just went and played with you at it to give you a sense of it, and I never criticized you for the fact that you weren't doing it as well as I thought you should. As far as I was concerned, it was just fine.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. That could have been a really big deal. That could have been really hurtful.
Yeah.
Had I not. Because if you had pushed me in those things, you would have been pushing me into something that didn't make me feel affirmed. To me, it felt, I think, and again, I'm kind of putting the hindsight 45 years later.
Sure.
But I feel like that would have been something that was not affirming. I didn't necessarily know why it wasn't affirming, but it didn't feel affirming to do those things that now I would say probably because they were stereotypically masculine. Maybe, I don't know. Or maybe it was just not my temperament and it happens to line up. I don't know. We're all different that way.
When you were very young, did you have a girlfriend?
No. My draw to want to be the girl was twice as strong as my draw to be attracted to the girl.
Now, that wasn't something that was a learned experience for you.
No, that was always innate.
Right.
From my youngest memories. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But what I learned is I learned how to hide that really well. Probably through things like, we are socialized in so many ways that we don't even think about. That we make jokes. Like you were saying, you would make some jokes about things, and it never occurred to you that you would be making a joke at my expense. And to be honest, because I didn't want that joke to be made at my expense, I told myself a story that it wasn't being made at my expense because I wasn't one of those people. And yeah, if I could be a girl, of course I would want to be, but I can't be. I'm not like those weird people out there. And I did a lot of mental gymnastics to push this down, push it away, build up a wall, which is why then when I was finally ready to take it down, why it came as such a surprise for you.
I'm Monica Scarbin. I love listening to the Transcendent podcasts, probably because I've been a guest speaker. I've been listening to these podcasts for over 2 years now and have found them to be not only inspirational, but very informative and emotionally lifting to my spirits, especially when I'm not feeling very hot. I'm a supporter and I'm glad to be a supporter. Please go to transcendent.com, click on support. By as little as $3 a month, you can cancel at any time.
A lot of parents, especially people of faith, when somebody comes out, their immediate response is, that's against what God wants. And yet, I know for you, faith is such an important part of your life, central to it. And yet, you didn't respond with the rules side of things. You didn't respond by whacking me over the head with a Bible. What made you different?
I don't call myself a Christian. When it was first used, it was other people looking at those who were followers of Christ, calling them Christians as a derogatory comment. That's what they were. And I never felt that's what I was. That song, "They know we are Christians by our love." No way. I'm telling you, there's a lot of people out there who call themselves Christians that they're a long way from love. Wow. So that's not me. I always said I was a believer by my love. I don't follow man's interpretation of what they think something is. I'm following God. I'm not following what somebody else interprets. It's a wonderful life. And when I had that wonderful life, that's something I want for you as well. Not a life that makes you follow rules and regulations and things that, oh, I don't want to do that, but I have to. It's sort of like the people who are going to school. They don't want to go to school, but I gotta go. And then there are people like you. I can't wait to go. I love to learn. And it,
As an adult, I
Yes.
came to that. Not when I was in high school so much.
but you see the difference. A lot of things that people say and a lot of things that people point to in the Bible that they want to use to support their opinion is just that. It's what they're trying to convince themselves that this is the way. God made me a certain way. Now, in my opinion, he gave me one great talent. I think I am hilarious.
The talent, of course, being that you think that you're hilarious.
Yeah, that's right. And because of that, I use humor a lot.
Yeah.
When I was in the hospital in 2019 having bypass surgery and people came in to visit me, I was throwing a lot of one-liners out and doing all kinds of funny things like that because it's the way God gave me the tools to cope. I don't have to reject that to show how pious I am to follow God. I can allow myself to adapt in this particular case to accept and then ultimately to affirm the LGBTQ plus community because I see it in a completely different light. It is not what man tells me, it's what God tells me.
A few weeks ago, I was really frustrated with the state of politics right now. And I just wanted to say something that would set my own heart the right way and I posted on Facebook, and I don't post a lot, but I posted and I said, love your neighbor as yourself. For all of our talk, that's all it's about, right?
Yes.
It's what we want from our political opponents. It's what we want for ourselves. It's what we want for our family. It's what we want when we're frustrated that other people aren't doing it. It's what we want for ourselves when we respond to them. Love your neighbor as yourself is really what it comes back down to. And that's what I'm hearing from you.
You know, God loves the person you hate the most. How about that?
Mm.
So my acceptance of you is not determined by what another human being interprets in the Bible. It's by what I feel in my own head. God has given me the ability to interpret for myself. And it's a whole lot different from a lot of other people. One thing that I do notice, sometimes I would say I have a prejudice against someone. Let's say, for example, I go to a fast food restaurant and somebody comes to wait on me, but behind the counter. Fast food, you're not sitting at a table for a waiter.
Mm-hmm.
And that person comes up and the language is rough. They don't really know. They don't know it. And they're maybe pretty shabbily dressed and they don't know how to cut their hair or comb their hair. It's easy for me to think, oh yeah, whoa, that person, whoa, they're not with it at all. But then I stop myself and I realize that's not love your neighbor as yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You and I had that experience once. We stopped at a fast food restaurant and she gave me the bill and she says, that's $17.76. And I says, that was a good year. Do you remember what she said?
She said, I don't know what happened that year. I don't really,
Yeah.
I don't know history.
Yeah. Yeah, we both laughed about that, and we're laughing now.
Yeah.
But it's easy to judge a person like that. And they have some unique qualities that I don't have. And I'm reminded about that when I think about how you should look at other people. They have a lot of things I don't have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, your faith has been, I think, really positive for you and helping you to keep looking at people with the best of intent that you can and making sure that you're not looking towards people in a judgmental way and doing your best to bring that positivity to the world. I know for me, as I went through a much stronger fundamentalist phase than you had ever gone through,
Yeah.
faith has been a real challenge for me on this side of faith. And I still am in the place of wrestling and not quite sure where I land on everything. But through all of that, the model that you have set of love your neighbor as yourself and the way that you have looked to that has continued to influence me. And no matter what else I think that seems like a pretty good principle.
If I had to say what it feels like to be a disciple, to follow God, that is the way I looked at myself treating you when you first came out. We all have the innate ability to know what's right. I can remember hearing Schwarzkopf. What was his first name? Norman
Schwarzkopf.
Yes, I can remember hearing him speak at a convention. And he said, this is my rule. Do what is right. And he's right. That's what we should do. Do what is right. You know innately what's right. Do what is right. And what's right is listening to this podcast.
That's right. We're grateful to have you coming back and listening week after week, and we try to be your voice of positivity here. I hope you've gotten something from hearing what motivates my dad and what drives him, because I think it's really something special, and I've taken a lot from that, and I hope you have as well. And with that,
we'll see you Monday.